Okay, so whenever I think of my high school experience, I'm like, get it off of me! Get it off, right? And it's so weird because like I think this like desire to not have the high school experience around me and have that dissipated from my life so very much keeps it in my life. So I think that I think about high school probably a lot more often than other people do. And I think about like my really good girlfriends who betrayed me, you know, like Amanda, who had great friends, and then she betrayed me and was no longer my friend at one point. And so one of the big things of my high school experience and what I used to believe about myself was that I was horrifically ugly and a really fat ass, okay? Like mega fat ass. And so I just thought, that's it, that's all I am. I'm horribly ugly and I'm horribly fat. And I remember it was around the age of 12 when I realized this. And I actually, just to be clear, I actually did used to be about 50 pounds overweight, okay? But I am more than I am now. And so I was a big girl. And even in my head, I used to think that I was like even like 3 inches taller, right? So I was really, really big, even in like the 8th grade. And I had a nickname at one point that was Andre the Giant, okay? So you can imagine, like, I'm like this pre-eating disorder chick, and people are calling me Andre the Giant. I was like horrified. So I always thought I was walking around like this big, giant person who had no place to be. And this was sort of my high school, my experience of myself in high school. And so we just had Christmas, and I just went home for a fair amount of time over the holiday season, and it was so horrible the whole entire 2 weeks that I was home in North Carolina that I literally found myself multiple times going, this is a fucking Christmas nightmare. It was just absolutely terrible. But one of the things that happens when I go home every single Christmas is I pull out all the evidence of ugly, fat Andrea. I pull it out from under the bed, like the boxes full of pictures, and I go through them and I look at them going, see, look how ugly, look how fat. See, look how ugly, look how fat. And I go down to my mother and I'm like, why did you let me look like this? What was wrong with you? Why didn't you tell me to fix my hair? And she's like, I thought you were cute, you know? And I'm like, this is terrible, this is terrible. And during this like Christmas nightmare hell of like all of us being in the house together for way, way too long, I somehow carved out 2 hours to go upstairs to my sister's old room where all of our journals and our yearbooks were located. And I was like, I'm gonna go through this stuff and I'm gonna find out what's in them, what's really, really in them. The last time I did this was about 4 years ago, and I found a yearbook from when I was in the 8th grade, and I didn't remember reading anything that anybody else had written except for one thing that one guy, I don't even know his name, had written, and he said, why don't you do us all a favor and get a nose job? Right? So even back 4 years ago, I'm like crying. I'm like, was I really that ugly? I don't understand. Like, I know I have a big nose, but blah, 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 right? So this Christmas, I pull out all the yearbooks that are my yearbooks. I found my sophomore year journal, and I start reading through them. I should be clear. First, I looked at the pictures of myself, and I have to tell you that I literally, the majority of my high school experience, and my sisters will corroborate this, they will not say that I'm making this up, I look like my brother in drag. Okay? Like, I had a really round head. I don't know why my head is so narrow now. It was really round. I was really big. I had crazy brown hair. I was a disaster, physically, right? Physically, I was a disaster, okay? As a person, compared to someone who's like fashionable and hip, right? But so I'm looking through my yearbook, and I started with the freshman year and sophomore, junior, senior, and I'm looking at what people wrote. And it was amazing. What they wrote was not, stay the same, never change, see you next year. It was like, Andrea, you're amazing. You're so funny. You're my best friend. I love you so much. Andrea, you're so funny. I'm so glad that I was in biology with you. I've never found anybody like you. I've never found a friend as good as you. tons and tons of these very authentic, shit that you just write in a yearbook, right? Like you just like signed a yearbook. But it was like you could tell that people took time. And you had your good friends back in high school, and you're like, some of them would write like these paragraphs or these like whole pages in an ode to me, right? Whereas like my whole high school experience was, I just have to get through it, avoiding people telling me that I'm ugly and fat. If I can make it so that no one ever says that to me, I'll be good, right? So then after this, I was like, okay, I'm having a realization here. I call one of my good friends from high school. I'm saying, what's going on? We haven't talked in forever. And then she, verbally, over the phone, tells me, and she's like crying when she says it. She says, I've never found a friend to replace you. And I was like, what? I was in North Carolina and I went to New York. And I thought, I'm just going to go to New York. Nobody in North Carolina cares about me. Screw everybody, whatever. And what I realized was what an asshole I was. So like, don't tell me I'm ugly and fat. I'm not interested in that shit. Don't tell me. And so I kept everybody at arm's length, right? Like, no, don't, And also Amanda that I mentioned earlier, in the yearbooks, every year, in all the yearbooks, she wrote, you're the first person I met here. I was so great that you're the first person I met here. We're such good friends, etc., etc. So all this story that I had made up about her betraying me wasn't true at all. At all. At all. At all. And so I guess in the area of fresh starts, what was beautiful about that experience to me is I feel like I am free from my high school experience. And I hadn't ever, I'm 37. Like, it's embarrassing to admit that I was still feeling jealous about people from high school. And I'm really honest to God, I do not feel that anymore. And it was only because I looked at the past and I got clear about what the hell actually happened. And I'm also clear that I'm not fat and